Well, hello, welcome back to another video. My name is Ash, and in the last video, I said I would explain a little bit about what I did for 6 weeks on the ship, considering that I deleted a lot of the footage. So the last video had footage that I put together of the 6 weeks I was in training before we went back for the UK staycation cruises. Obviously, I'm not on the ship anymore, so I'm kind of going retrospectively back in time. So I just wanted to explain what it was like during those 6 weeks, what we actually did and how it went. I realise this kind of concept is a little bit weird because it kind of breaks up the videos that I was putting up there. But yeah, so during those 6 weeks, as you could see, I changed rooms. So originally, when I came out of quarantine, or the day before I came out of quarantine, we knew that we were going to be leaving. So I packed up all my stuff thinking, right, I'm going to go to crew cabin. And then we got a phone call that basically said, you're staying in your guest cabin that I was in. So that's sweet. Perfect. So I stayed in the guest cabin for about 4 weeks or so. And then I got evicted from that, a little eviction notice outside my door saying you need to move from this cabin to another cabin. Found out it was another guest cabin on deck 1. So I went from deck 5 to deck 1. So it was still okay. I was still in a guest cabin. I didn't have a balcony, but I had 2 little portholes. And it was fine. It was lovely. I was in there for probably about 2 weeks or so. Right up until the end of that 6 weeks, and right up until we started doing the test cruising. So basically, just as we started doing the test cruising is when I moved into a crew cabin. I had to move into a crew cabin, as I said, because I was fully vaccinated where other people were not, so they couldn't have a crew cabin. So they, unfortunately, had to stay in a guest cabin for their whole contracts. But I'm not bitter about that at all. Not bitter. So in those 6 weeks, we basically spent all our time training. There was lots of downtime as well, but we basically were doing training. We were refreshing what we knew already in our role for youth activities, and then we were also doing like ship safety stuff as well. Basically going over all the safety stuff on the ship, what we need to know, where we need to go, all the things that we need to do, along with all the policies, the strict policies within youth activities, child protection, all that type of stuff as well. Then we basically had to figure out in those 6 weeks how the youth activities kids club space was going to work, because Shoreside had basically said, this is what you're going to do. Basically, it kind of had an outline, but they didn't really provide any substance to what they wanted. So it's basically our job to come up with how to make what they wanted work, and actually how we were going to do it on a day-to-day basis and in practical, instead of like in their theory on paper. So basically what we would normally do in the kids club is that we would just have positions in the kids club, and the kids would come in and they'd run around, do whatever they wanted, but we had to learn and create a system that was going to work for us. So Shoreside has said you can only have 3 groups of kids. Each group has 15 kids in it, 1 counsellor per group, and then other counsellors dotted around to make up numbers, make sure there's eyes and everything everywhere. And then it was basically just figure it out yourself, as long as the kids are socially distanced from each other and then 6 feet away and socially distanced away from another group. Bearing in mind that the kids are 3 to 12 years old, 15 kids, telling them to stay in one space, stay socially distanced from each other, but at the same time we need to play games, so the games need to be socially distanced, all while maintaining minimal contact with items, so pretty much having no equipment to play games with because they couldn't touch it. It was very hard. So we had to try and figure that out. We had to figure out how kids move around the space, how we take them to the toilet, how we move around to make sure they get the full experience of the kids club, how they rotate, the timings of the rotations while they fit in the shows. So the 6 weeks was basically just trying to figure all of that out. And it was frustrating at times trying to figure it out because, you know, I didn't realize I was going to be trying to help do that. The 6 weeks of us pretending that we had kids, or pretending to be kids, because that's what we did, and that was weird. Pretending to be kids, rotate around, is definitely different to actually having real kids in a real space, doing real things. So yeah, you can simulate and simulate all day, every day for hours and hours and hours, but that means nothing compared to actually doing the real thing. Long as you know the set timings of when you need to move from one space to another and when the shows are going to be, you've got it down, because everything else is just changes. You know, kids are all different, and every cruise that we ever had was different. So as long as you got the, you know, that down, it was all right. And then we had to learn basically games that we could play. So, you know, on top of all that, learning what games we can play. So as well as learning all our kind of youth activities, on-the-job training, learning all about the old policies, like refreshing ourselves and all the old strict policies, we're learning all about the new policies, the new way of doing things, the new rules, all this other weird and crazy stuff that we hadn't even thought of before, and all these problems that we didn't know existed, and then problems that we didn't know existed until kids got on the ship and realised, oh my God, that doesn't work. As well as doing all of that, some of us had additional duties. There was 40 people in youth activities. 6 people got selected on day 1 to be have a drill duty or an emergency duty that you people see in the yellow jackets in case something happens on the ship. And I was the lucky person to be included in that 6. And I knew it was going to be me. It's always me. My drill duty this time was traffic controller. So as well as doing all the additional stuff for youth activities, we had to relearn all the emergency procedures for our drill duties, and then also learn how drill works, because drill was completely different. For the people who had emergency stations, emergency duties, we had the Coast Guard coming up, so we all had to learn everything it was about the ship that we needed to know, which was okay, but we just kept simulating emergencies over and over and over again. All the people that didn't have drill duties didn't have to worry about that, but we did. And it was a little bit more stressful because you don't want to be the person that messes it up for the whole ship. If Coast Guard come on during the test and ask you a question, you're like, oh, I don't know. That could affect, especially if it's serious, that could affect what they mark down on the ship. They came on and we did a fake emergency simulation like all cruisers do. And I was positioned on the 8th deck, and I have to check in on the 3rd deck, but obviously I have to get my life jacket from my deck in minus levels. So you have to go to your crew cabin, get your life jacket, go and check in, then go to your station. And because you can't use elevators because it's an emergency, you have to walk up the stairs, up and down the stairs. Doing that nearly every day for 6 weeks, or up until we did the Coast Guard, was exhausting. And especially wearing your life jacket, you can see all the crew just slowly putting themselves up the stairs of the cruise ship. But yeah, that's also something else that we had to do during those times. So as well as doing your, learning your own role, there were additional things to learn as well. It was a weird kind of 6 weeks altogether of learning lots of different things, lots of new things, learning about old things. But also there was a lot of fun as well. So we had a lot of downtime in the evenings. We worked kind of normal office hours, if you like, which is obviously new for us, especially in youth activities. And that was weird, it was nice. Obviously we had a little downtime in the evening times. Then we kind of switched it up, so sometimes we wouldn't actually finish work till 10, even though there was no guests. But they switched it up a lot. But although we had a lot of downtime, there wasn't actually an awful lot to do because we had very, very strict COVID rules enforced, whether it was capacities in venues on the ships, obviously 2 per table. So it was very hard to kind of socialise. I like to play games, so we tried to play card games as best we could, making sure we fit within the rules. And you're playing a game of Monopoly Deal, a game of cards, and you're on 4 different tables because you can't fit everybody around one table. So that was kind of hard, and it made it a little bit more, as you're trying to relax in the evening, but you can't. And obviously you've got to keep your mask on all the time. But we got through it. Again, that 6 weeks had its ups and its downs. It was frustrating, but it was good fun, and I'm glad I got to be part of that kind of opening team on it. Well, with that kind of opening team, obviously I came back onto a ship where I only knew a handful of people within youth activities, only a handful of people on the whole ship, not many people, whereas when I go back to the Dream, even if I don't know people, I recognise people, and they recognise me, and you kind of have that kind of, you're right, even if you don't actually know him. But here, I didn't know anybody, I didn't know how the ship worked, I didn't know how to get around anywhere, so I had to learn how to get around the ship. I had to get to know new people, so that was kind of interesting. Especially in the first day, I started introducing, hello, my name is Ash, and just in a room full of people you don't know. And it's quite overwhelming. It's like being a new hire again, you come into a position where you don't know anybody. And so 6 weeks of trying to get to know people, get to know how people work, trying to suss them out, because that's all about, when you work with people, you try and figure out people. So everyone in youth activities was either from Mexico or from the UK, because that seemed to be the only people they could get on the ship at the time, although our manager was from Canada. So that made it a bit different as well, because that felt different, because normally youth activities, like any cruise ship, is made up of a number of people from a number of different nationalities. So that was basically a rundown of those 6 weeks. We went from Dover to Southampton to Portland to Sea Days, and that was all we did. We'd just go round and round and round. No time off the ship, obviously, so we just stayed on the ship the whole time. It was different being on the ship for so long with no guests leading up to something, as in, we were working towards having guests on, because obviously last time I was on the ship, we was on the ship for a long time with no guests, but we wasn't working towards anything. We were just kind of waiting around to see what happened. So it's a definitely different feeling. Bear in mind, the end of my last contract, I had no guests, and then coming back onto the ship, my first 8-9 weeks with no guests. Again, I keep saying it was an experience. Glad I was part of that kind of opening team. As we move forward, you'll see more videos of the rest of my time on the cruise ship. So thank you for watching this. I hope that this quick kind of overview of what happened in those 6 weeks kind of clears up anything that you might have wondered what was happening. It's very exciting to see so many people going back to the ship. And obviously new people who have been asking me lots of questions over the last couple of months finally getting on the ship. So it's good to see. But my name is Ash. As I always end my videos, thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good week.